Hello, friends. This is the Netarts Friends Church podcast. We are Jesus people, Kingdom of God people, welcoming, yearning, sharing. And we're glad you're connecting here with us. We'd love to connect in person as well. If you're inclined to support this podcast or for more information, just hop on over to netartsfriends.org. That's netartsfriends.org. Let's jump into today's sermon. When Jacob and Sarah became parents, they never dreamed that life with their perfect little baby, little Timothy, could turn into a nightmare, testing their limits beyond anything they thought imaginable. Never had they envisioned the reality they found themselves living. In the blink of an eye, little Timmy could go from a happy child into an experience that was sheer terror for every member of the family. Something would seize him and throw him violently to the ground. He would scream and foam at the mouth in convulsions, and this happened over and over, day after day. They tried to talk him through it. They tried to tell him to stop it. They would hold him through it. They even shouted, trying to shock him out of it. Nothing worked. Jacob and Sarah never imagined cleaning the burns of their screaming 4-year-old who they had just found convulsing in the fire, or going down to the river to draw water and hearing a splash and realizing Timmy's in the bottom of the river convulsing and drowning, or being jerked awake in the dead of the night to hear Timmy screaming and his head smashing against the walls. In the early days, Jacob and Sarah hoped that this was some kind of a strange one-off occurrence, but Timmy's condition deteriorated to the point that Timmy's episodes were constant. Timmy was either in the middle of an episode or coming out of an episode, and they were trying to tend to wounds and broken dishes or broken furniture, or they were on edge. They were jumpy, just watching and waiting, headed into the next episode. Whatever it was that seized him scarcely ever left him. The chronic stress created a strain on Jacob and Sarah that was impossible to explain to people who hadn't lived it. They couldn't remember the last time they ever had a good night of sleep. Their bodies lived on adrenaline dumps and adrenaline crashes. Their cortisol levels were off the charts. Peace was a forgotten word. Their home became a war zone of unpredictable attacks. Their marriage was strained. They were exhausted. There was no downtime. As the years wore on, Jacob and Sarah became more and more isolated. They couldn't invite anyone to their home because guests were too uncomfortable when Timmy went into one of his episodes, and they couldn't bring Timmy to community events or worship gatherings because his episodes were too disruptive, and people said terrible things. Jacob and Sarah had tried everything: medical doctors, spiritual healers. Nobody was able to do anything. So many relatives and friends had turned into armchair experts, throwing out 100 different versions of unsolicited advice, parenting strategies, conventional medicines, alternative medicines, comparing Timmy to that time their child had a high fever, all or nothing thinking, people claiming to know what was wrong and what should be done. They found themselves dodging criticism and advice from well-meaning friends and from judgmental neighbors. People blamed Timmy. People blamed Jacob and Sarah. They suggested that Timmy needed to learn how to control himself. I noticed the other day, they would say, that Timmy was able to follow some of your directions, but then, I don't know, did he get worked up? He fell into one of his episodes. I think you just need to lay down the law a little more. Jacob and Sarah experienced Timmy's symptoms as physical, but the community and spiritual leaders told Jacob and Sarah that Timmy's problem was spiritual. They said Timmy was demonized. If that was true, they weren't able to drive the demon out. Nobody understood. Nobody could offer anything that helped. People suggested that Timmy had done something wrong or was being punished. They suggested that Jacob and Sarah had done something wrong and they were being punished. Other people said it's probably because you have weak faith. Jacob and Sarah slowly lost their place in their community. The more people saw Timmy's terrorizing episodes and talked amongst themselves, the more stigma and shame Jacob and Sarah fell under. They became ostracized and abandoned. There's something that breaks inside of you as a parent when you are told that your child is demonized. And there's something that shatters even more when you come to believe or fear that it might be true. You begin to believe that you must be truly flawed, not worthy of connection, not worthy of belonging, not worthy of love. It must be your fault. Every dream of ever having a quote normal child or a quote normal life falls away. Jacob and Sarah were trapped in a nightmare of survival, and the worst part of all of it was that their precious little son, their perfect little Timmy, was being shattered, destroyed, becoming invisible. They were losing him. When people looked at Timmy, nobody saw Timmy the person. They only saw a child thrashing in the dust. Demon Timmy, dirty Timmy, scabby Timmy, stigma Timmy, problem Timmy, project Timmy. So a discussion question here, a reflection question. If you happened to find yourself in Jacob and Sarah's shoes, what is one of the aspects of the situation that might cause feelings of total desperation and darkness to set in on you? All right. This brings us to our gospel story today, starting in Luke chapter 9, verse 1 and 2, and then moving on to verse 37 through 50. And Jesus called the 12 together and gave them power and authority over all demons and to cure diseases. And he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal. Moving on to verse 37, so there's a time lapse in the story there. But it says, on the next day when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. And behold, a man from the crowd cried out, Teacher, I beg you to look at my son, for he's my only child. And behold, a spirit seizes him, and he suddenly cries out. It convulses him so that he foams at the mouth and shatters him, and will hardly leave him. And I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Jesus answered, O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here. Even while the boy was coming, the demon threw him to the ground in a convulsion. But Jesus rebuked the impure spirit, healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And they were all amazed at the greatness of God. While everyone was marveling at all that Jesus did, he said to his disciples, Listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men. But they didn't understand what this meant. It was hidden from them so that they did not grasp it, and they were afraid to ask him about it. An argument started among the disciples as to which of them would be the greatest. Jesus, knowing their thoughts, took a little child and had him stand beside him. And then he said to them, Whoever welcomes this little child in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. For it is the one who is least among you all who is the greatest." "Master," said John, "we saw someone driving out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he's not one of us." "Do not stop him," Jesus said, "for whoever is not against you is for you." This is not only a story that happened way back when. We're all living in the middle of different versions of this story. You may find yourself in the shoes of Timmy, or Jacob, or Sarah, or one of the 12 disciples. And yes, I know that I'm giving names to some nameless characters in Luke's story. Our world is full of people who find themselves in desperate situations, living through things they could have never imagined and would have never chosen. Chronic suffering and strain, things that nobody understands. Our world is full of voiceless victims, people who become invisible, people who are so shattered and crushed that they cannot make their way to the help that is offered. Our world turns these Timmys and Jacobs and Sarahs into talking points and memes and sound bites. Everyone claims to know what the problem is. Everyone knows who's to blame. It's a medical problem. No, it's a spiritual problem. It's a parenting problem. It's a personal problem. It's a political problem. And on and on. And these individuals and families receive all kinds of unsolicited advice and armchair therapy. They receive the weight of judgment and spiritual condemnation and shame. They feel the loneliness of stigma and social isolation and ostracism. And they hang by the tiniest thread of hope, desperate. And standing in the middle of this story, we find Jesus. Jesus is in a very frustrated place in this story. He seems genuinely upset. And he says, "O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here." See, Jesus had declared good news for the poor, for the imprisoned, for the blind, for the oppressed, and he had sent his disciples out with authority and power to drive out demons and to cure diseases so that the love of Jesus might flow through them. And yet, little Timmy was not healed. There was a twist, there was a kink in the hose. The love of Jesus was not making it to Timmy. There was something that was twisted, inside out, upside down, and Jesus erupted in both compassion and frustration. O faithless and twisted generation. What was it that was twisted within Jesus's disciples so that they could not drive the demon out, so that healing could not happen? And how does this same twist show up within you and within me and within our world today? There is a kind of help that can flow out of you that tries to help. And you mean well, but you don't see the person. You see the problem. You see the project. You see a boy convulsing in the dust. And your mind is quickly sucked into diagnostics. Who's to blame? What's the problem? Is it physical? Is it spiritual? Interestingly, we're told that the demon seized the boy, which is spiritual language. And then we're also told that Jesus healed the boy, which is medical language. Matthew's gospel calls it epilepsy. Some of us are lured into all or nothing thinking, well, it has to be one or the other. And some of us are pulled into the vortex of the complexity. Wow, isn't that amazing that it's both? But either way, it's so easy to slip into fix-it mode, armchair therapist mode, unsolicited advice mode, doling out your fixes, your solves, your diagnosis, your medicine. And you mean well. You truly do. But underneath this, there's an energy igniting. And that energy is, I can solve it. I can fix it. That's what the disciples tried to do. And you may not even be fully aware of it, but the most important word in that sentence becomes I. It's I can do it. There's an opportunity to look good, to be a hero. Ideas of greatness begin to blossom and bloom. Luke says an argument started among the disciples as to which of them would be the greatest. You unconsciously confuse helping with being recognized for helping. And you get your identity all wrapped up in the help that you're giving, and the help is no longer moving through you because it's trying to come from you. And this twist, this kink in the hose, stops up the real power and authority of the love of Jesus from moving through you. Jesus tried to tell his disciples to fix this in their minds, to let this settle into their ears, that the path of greatness that he was walking was a path that lays down self. It's a path that suffers and forgives, and where love is stronger than death. But the disciples were too enamored with the crowd's ideas of greatness and with their ideas of greatness. And the twist shows up when ideas of greatness center around, look what I did, look what I accomplished, look what I was able to fix. Underneath it lurks, I'm better than you. Look at me. The twist is in full display once helpers enter into competition with other helpers. And the competition is all about proving who's the best at saving the day, and who's the hero, and who knows how to deal with the problems, and who knows how to get the projects done. The twist is in full display when helpers no longer think that they're on the same team. They're no longer focused on the most vulnerable. They draw lines and boundaries around their world. They polarize, they censor, they put one another down. They name who is with us and who is not one of us. The twist is in full display when helpers are actively preventing help from effectively making it to the vulnerable and the needy because they say the help is coming from the wrong people and they are not one of us. And our world sees this every day. The competitive drive for greatness can cause us to dig deep into us versus them and become known for who we are against and who we refuse to welcome. Notice in this story that Jesus says, whoever welcomes this little child in my name welcomes me. And John responds by saying, well, this one guy over here, we tried to stop him because he's not one of us. And those two words, welcome and stop or prevent, are antonyms. They are opposites of one another. The twist happens when we fail to notice the healing and saving work of Christ that's flowing through people who we have deemed not one of us, and we fail to notice the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control that is flowing through others. It's when we think we are the ones with a rightful claim on the name of Jesus. And the gospel, the good news that Jesus declared for the poor and the imprisoned, the blind and the oppressed, simply does not arrive. The little Timmies of this world become pawns that helpers move in their competition to be known as the greatest, to be at the top of their world. The little Timmies are turned into memes and talking points and sound bites of cultural conflict about who's on whose team and who's failing to help and who's preventing who from helping, and on and on. And it would be easy to stop at this point and say, well, this is American politics. And whether you're coming from the right or the left, we could say, yes, Both sides. Both sides compete to prove who's the best at helping and to claim they know how to deal with the problems. They know how to do the projects and who to welcome and who to prevent and whose ideas of greatness are right. We could say that this is very, very political. And all of that is true. This human condition certainly touches our politics. And keeping the conversation about this twist in the realm of politics only, in the realm of world systems only, could still be a way of holding the problem at arm's length. It could still be a way of locating the problem somewhere else, saying, well, the twist is out there. It's with all those people on the right or all those people on the left, instead of recognizing the twist is in here. It's in my heart. The twist can actually happen in my life. We all mean well. We really do. But whether you find yourself on the right, the middle, or the left, you can easily fall into the twist as you encounter the Timmys, Jacobs, and Sarahs of this world and in your life. Jesus, knowing their thoughts and your thoughts, took a little child and had him stand beside him. And then he said to them, whoever welcomes this little child in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. For it is the one who is least among you all who is the greatest. Numerous New Testament scholars, Joel Green, David Garland, suggest the reading, the possibility that the child in Luke's story, the child who Jesus had stand beside him there, was none other than little Timmy, the child who Jesus had just restored to health. Little Timmy, the boy who was known for anything but standing. Timmy, who was known for convulsing in the dirt. Timmy the demon boy, Timmy the problem, Timmy the project, Timmy the voiceless, Timmy the powerless, Timmy the dirty, Timmy the scabby, Timmy the stigma. Even Timmy's own father felt like Timmy the person was becoming invisible. He was losing him. He was shattered. He was being destroyed. Jesus was the only one who was able to see the true greatness of Timmy the person. For it is the one who is least among you who is the greatest. Let me read to you the very first, the primary meaning of Jesus's word, the greatest. This is from Lau and Nita's Greek-English lexicon of the New Testament. Greatest, pertaining to being surprising, in view of being important. Pertaining to being surprising, in view of being important. It does not seem to have occurred to a single one of the disciples that the greatest person they had encountered that day was Dirty Timmy, Demon Boy Timmy, Problem Timmy, Project Timmy. Children in the ancient Roman Empire had no power, no status, no rights. It was the ancient world's way of coping with the harsh reality that 51% of children died before the age of 5 and 60% of children were dead before the age of 20. So, you treat them with very little importance. Who thought of Timmy as a bright-eyed, beautiful child standing up, shining with the brilliance of God's love? A child of incredible resilience who at a young age had already lived through an extraordinary amount of suffering and who was an incredible person with such a depth of goodness? Who in the world ever looked at Timmy and thought that? Who looked at Timmy and said, Timmy, you make this world brighter. You have real value. I like you, Timmy. You're a gem. You're a treasure. You're special. You're important. Jesus was smitten. He was taken with the greatness of Timmy. I wonder how many weeks or months or even years it had been since Timmy had experienced anyone communicating to him, "Timmy, you are worth celebrating. Timmy, you're extraordinary. You're important. You're welcomed. You're accepted. I see you, Timmy. What's important about you, Timmy, isn't this illness or this impure spirit, and it's not whatever stories of blame and shame that you've lived through and swallowed. No, I see deeper than everything that's shattered and crushed. I see you, Timmy, and you are the greatest. You are special beyond special. You can and should like yourself, Timmy. Your life is beautiful. You make the world brighter just by being who you are." The way that Jesus dealt with Timmy was much more than doing something to Timmy or for Timmy. Jesus wanted to be with Timmy. And the love that flowed from Jesus was able to heal and save Timmy from whatever it was that had been throwing him down and convulsing him hundreds of times. Timmy was able to stand next to Jesus, welcomed, accepted. Timmy, the greatest. Some of you have childhood memories where nobody saw you. No one saw your person. No one invited you to stand next to them. No one ever declared your greatness. And for the hose to get untwisted in your life, before we ever talk about other people, for some of you, the healing that you need is that you need to see Jesus in the room when you are that little child. And you need to see Jesus calling you over to his side. And all the other people are in the room, the people in your life who wouldn't ever pay you any attention. They didn't care. They had a very low view of you. And you need to hear Jesus saying to all of them about you, "Hey, this little child is the greatest. I want all of you to see that this little child is the greatest." What might happen if this kink became untwisted in your heart? Life is hard. Work is stressful. People are needy. And we so easily get pulled into the vortex of either just not wanting anything to do with other people's problems or just fix it already. If I have to deal with their stuff, then let's fix it. What might happen if you came to truly see and celebrate that the greatest person in the room, whatever room you're in, is Timmy? It's the most vulnerable person in the room. How might you become a part of the mission of Jesus, who declares good news for the poor, the imprisoned, the blind, and the oppressed? How might a pathway of love flow from the heart of Jesus through you and into the lives of others? Who are the Timmys, the people nobody invites to have stand next to them and nobody talks to, but everyone talks about, who everyone has ideas about and everyone's trying to fix? And what possibilities might open up if, in your eyes, they became the greatest, pertaining to being surprising, in view of being important? What would happen if your eyes looked at them and you said, "The world is brighter because you are here, and there's something of the image of God that is in you that you bring to this world, and it's beautiful, and the ugliest of evil powers can't fully shatter it"? cannot put out that light? What if the faithfulness that Jesus longs for and the untwisting that Jesus longs for is found in the least among you all becoming the greatest, so that love can flow through you instead of from you? Jesus knows that the only pathway for you to truly get your heart untwisted is the path of prayer. It is in contemplating the face of Christ that you come to see that Timmy is the greatest. As the Apostle Paul says in Philippians 2:1-4, now if your experience of Christ's encouragement and love means anything to you, if you've known something of the fellowship of his Spirit and all that it means in kindness and deep sympathy, do make my best hope for you come true. Live together in harmony, live together in love, as though you had only one mind and one spirit between you. Never act from motives of rivalry or personal vanity, but in humility think more of each other than you do of yourselves. None of you should think only of his own affairs, but should learn to see things from other people's point of view. And who's to say how far the healing might flow? Who's to say what kind of healing might make its way into the lives of Timmy, Jacob, and Sarah, and into our lives when and if we become untwisted followers of Jesus, without any kinks in the flow of love, never coming from us, but flowing through us. So a final discussion question, a final reflection question. Have you ever had anyone see you and celebrate you in the way Timmy was seen and celebrated? How did that impact you? And what possibilities did that open up within you? What's the Spirit saying to you? Thank you for joining us for a Sunday sermon from Netart's Friends Church. We hope you'll join us soon for one of our in-person worship gatherings. For more information, hop on over to netartsfriends.org. God's peace be with you, friends.